I was $120 short when the clerk pushed my money orders back across the counter. My rent was supposed to be $1,080. The screen in front of him said I owed $200. My 8-year-old daughter stood beside me with her purple backpack against her knees. A man in a dark coat waited directly behind us. Before I left that office, I would learn that he owned the building. Subscribe now and leave your reaction in the comments, because what happened after that payment was refused changed far more than my lease. On Friday, February 6, 2026, at 5:43 in the afternoon, I stood inside the leasing office at Briar Glen Apartments in Cleveland with 2 money orders in my hand and $11 left in my checking account. The clerk looked at the first money order, then the second. "That only totals $1,080. That's my rent," he typed again. "The balance is $1,200. I'm in 3B, Leah Whitmore." "I know. My lease says $1,080. There are additional resident charges." "What charges?" "Resident services bundle, $79, administration, $26, payment processing, $15. I stared at him. "I've never paid those." "They're on the account." "That doesn't mean they're in my lease." The clerk was young and already looked tired. I did not blame him for the policy. I also was not going to let a computer screen settle the question. "Can you take the rent amount and leave the rest pending?" "No partial payments. I'm paying the amount on my lease." "The system treats the full balance as due." June shifted beside me. A loose thread hung from one of the patches I had sewn over a tear in her backpack. "Mom, I'm okay." I opened my purse. There were 3 paper envelopes inside. Rent, transportation, groceries. The rent envelope was empty because the money had already become the 2 money orders on the counter. Transportation held $42. Groceries held $67. I counted them anyway. 109. Even if I emptied both, I would still be $11 short. Then I would have no bus money for work and almost no food money until my next payment. The clerk glanced toward the clock. "If it isn't paid by 6, the late fee may post automatically." "May?" "It's automatic. Then give me something in writing showing I tried to pay before the deadline." He paused. "I can print the balance." "Print it." Behind me, the man in the dark coat moved closer. He had been looking at his phone when we entered. Now he was looking at the envelopes in my hand. He was tall, with dark brown hair graying at the temples. His clothes were expensive without displaying a logo. He carried a leather document case and a ring of building keys. The clerk slid the page toward me. At the bottom were the 3 lines. Resident services bundle, $79. Administration fee, $26. Processing fee, $15. I photographed the sheet. The man spoke. "Does that first charge say resident services bundle?" The clerk looked past me. "Yes." "What code?" "RSB 79. The man's mouth tightened. "Is that on a renewal or an original lease?" I turned toward him. "I moved in almost 3 years ago. Did you renew recently?" "In November." "Was the bundle listed?" "Not that I remember." The clerk looked between us. I asked the man, "Do you work for Northbridge?" "No." "Then why do you know their regional manager?" "I work with the ownership group." June tugged my sleeve. "Are we going home?" "Yes." I put both money orders back in my purse. The clerk said, "You can pay online if you get the rest." "I won't have the rest tonight." I walked out with the rent unpaid. The cold hit us when the glass door shut. Briar Glen was a brick complex built around 2 parking lots and a narrow courtyard. Snow had been pushed into grey piles along the curb. June took my hand as we walked toward Broadview Road. "Are we in trouble?" "No." I did not know that yet, but I knew what she needed from me. After half a block, she said, "You forgot the money." "I still have it." "Why didn't you pay?" "They asked for more than we agreed to pay." "Can they do that?" "I'm going to find out." On the bus, I photographed both money orders with the date and amounts visible and emailed every picture to myself. Subject: Rent payment refused, FEB 6. Then I opened the tenant portal. The balance was still $1,200. The bundle had been posted 3 days earlier. The administration fee appeared the same day. The processing fee had appeared that morning. None was visible on the screenshot I had taken the previous week. I saved another screenshot. Then I searched Northbridge Property Services. Briar Glen appeared in its Cleveland portfolio. The ownership line listed Mercer Housing Group, LLC. I recognized the name from a small sign near the entrance. I searched Mercer Housing Group. The first business profile had a photograph at the top. The man who had stood behind me at the counter was beside an apartment building with one hand in his coat pocket. Grant Mercer, founder and managing principal. I read it twice. Mercer Housing Group owned or controlled more than a dozen residential properties in Ohio. Briar Glen was one of them. June lifted her head from the window. What? That man in the office owns our building. The tall one? Yes. Why was he standing in line? I don't know. Later that Friday evening, June sat at our kitchen table doing fractions while I spread my lease across the counter. The lease was 31 pages. The renewal I had signed in November was 6. I searched both documents. Resident Services Bundle. Nothing. Bundle. Nothing. Administration fee. Only a section about returned payments. The renewal was clear. Base rent, $1,080. Water billed separately. Trash included. No monthly bundle. No $26 administration charge. No $15 processing fee unless I chose a third-party payment option. I had bought money orders specifically to avoid that. I photographed those pages. June looked up. Are you doing work? For us. She nodded and went back to her worksheet. My Ford had been sitting dead for almost a month with a failed transmission. Until I could afford the repair, the bus was how I got to my contract job, June's school program, and my evening shifts at a commercial laundry. I could not empty the transportation envelope. The grocery money had to last. I opened a blank document and typed what had happened. February 6th. Attempted rent payment of $1,080 before deadline. Payment refused because portal demanded $1,200. I added the names I knew: Northbridge Property Services, Mercer Housing Group, Grant Mercer. Then I attached every photograph. An email from the tenant portal arrived while June was brushing her teeth. New account activity. Late fee, $75. My balance was now $1,270. I took another screenshot. The same system that had refused my rent had penalized me for not paying it. I clicked the support link. I wrote that I had attempted to pay the full base rent before the deadline. That payment was refused because of disputed charges not listed in my lease, and that I wanted written authority for every added fee. I did not mention Grant. I wanted Northbridge's answer before anyone had a reason to make it cleaner. Then I searched his name again. Most articles were about acquisitions, renovations, occupancy, and interest rates. One older interview caught my attention because the headline mentioned housing stability. Grant had said his company avoided aggressive late fee structures because tenants who could predict their housing costs were more likely to remain stable. I saved the article. My portal still showed $1,275. On Saturday, February 7th, I woke to a reply from Northbridge. The message was 4 sentences. The charges were described as standard property fees. The balance was due in full. Late fees would continue according to policy. For questions, I could contact the regional office during business hours. No lease section, no explanation of why the charges appeared 3 days before rent was due. No answer to why they applied to a 3-year tenant. I forwarded the email to myself. June came into my room wearing one sock. Can we still go to the library? Yes, I had promised her. At the library, she used a children's computer while I searched public records. Briar Glen's parcel information led through 2 LLCs before reaching Mercer Housing Group. Grant's name appeared on the corporate filings. There was no ambiguity. He owned the company behind the property. I found another article on Mercer Housing Group's refinancing plans. Briar Glen was among the properties being evaluated. The inspection date was February 6th. I wrote it down. June rolled her chair over. Can we look at books now? Yes. She chose 2 mysteries and a book about volcanoes. At the checkout desk, my phone buzzed. An unknown Cleveland number. I let it go to voicemail. Outside, I listened. Ms. Whitmore, this is Amanda from the Briar Glen leasing office. I'm calling regarding your account. Please contact us Monday morning. Nothing else. I saved the voicemail. On the bus home, June opened the volcano book on her lap. I looked at the printed balance again. Grant had known the exact name of the fee. He had asked whether I was on an old lease. He had asked about the regional manager. Either the charge was being used in a way he had not expected, or his questions had been theatre. I had no proof of either, so I kept collecting what I could prove. I made a folder on my phone called Briar Glen, Lease, Renewal, Balance Sheet, Screenshots, Northbridge Email, Voicemail, Refinancing Article, Photographs of the money orders. On Sunday, February 8th, another automated email arrived while June coloured at the kitchen table. A new document had appeared in the tenant portal. Account delinquency warning. I downloaded it. The notice said unresolved balances could be referred for further collection action. I printed it and placed it behind the lease. June looked toward the printer. More rent stuff? Yes. Did the building man fix it? No. Is he going to? I don't know. She went back to colouring. I opened my purse and counted the envelopes again. Transportation, $37. Groceries, $58. Rent, 2 money orders totaling $1,080. I wrote Refuse 26 across the rent envelope and put it in the locked drawer beside my bed. That money was not extra. It was not available for groceries, the car, or anything else. It was rent, and I intended to keep it intact. On Monday, February 9th, I called the Northbridge Regional Office during a break from my contract work. A receptionist transferred me twice before a woman introduced herself as Dana. I gave her my apartment number and explained that I wanted the lease provision authorizing the new charges. She placed me on hold. When she returned, her tone had changed. The resident services bundle was added during a portfolio update. I understand when it was added. I'm asking where I agreed to it. It's a standard property charge. Where did I agree to it? I don't have your full lease in front of me. I do. Silence. Then she said, "You can submit a written dispute." I already did. I see that. Then please answer it in writing. I'll note the account. Will late fees stop while it's reviewed? I can't promise that. Will collection activity stop? I can't promise that either. I wrote down her name and the substance of the call as soon as we hung up. At lunch, I checked the portal. No change. That evening, I found an email from Briar Glen confirming that maintenance technicians and ownership representatives had been on site Friday for a refinancing inspection. Grant's presence now had a paper trail from the property itself. The inspection had been scheduled before my dispute began. I saved that too. On Tuesday, February 10th, June and I came back from the bus stop carrying a bag of groceries between us. There was a notice taped to our apartment door. I saw the red text before I reached it. 3-day notice. June stopped beside me. What is that? Give me a second. I set the grocery bag down and read the page. The amount demanded was not $1,080. It was $1,275. The notice treated the disputed fees and late charge as part of the balance. My 2 money orders were still locked in the bedroom. I took photographs before touching the notice. Front, back, door number, hallway. Then I removed it carefully and carried it inside. June put the milk in the refrigerator without being asked. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder I had started 4 days earlier. The first page showed the amount in my lease. The next showed the amount Northbridge demanded. Then came my attempted payment, the refusal, the late fee, the emails, and now the notice. I added the new document to the end. I did not call Grant. I did not call Northbridge again that night. I had already asked the question they had avoided answering. Now I had something more useful than another phone conversation. I had the sequence. That notice is still on your door. Mrs. Holloway was standing across the hallway with a grocery cart when I stepped out of apartment 3B on Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, just after 7 in the morning. I had taken the paper down the night before, but a strip of red adhesive was still stuck to the paint. "I kept it," I said. She glanced toward June, who was tightening the strap on her purple backpack. "They put one on 2F last month." I stopped with my key halfway into the lock. "For rent?" "I don't know. I didn't ask." Mrs. Holloway pushed the cart toward the elevator. She was 72 and had lived at Briar Glen longer than anyone I knew. She also disliked gossip enough that when she mentioned something, I wrote it down. June and I left for the bus. The 3-day notice was folded inside my work bag between my lease and the balance sheet from the leasing office. I had scanned it before leaving home. The original stayed with me. At my contract job, I spent the first half of the morning correcting insurance codes for a physical therapy group. I did not search Grant Mercer's name until my scheduled break. I started with the interview I had saved over the weekend. It had been published 6 years earlier by a regional business magazine. The photograph showed Grant in a white shirt, with his sleeves rolled to his forearms, standing in an empty apartment under renovation. The article was long. I searched for the word mother. Grant said his mother had been paid weekly at a nursing home in Toledo and divided her cash into envelopes before she bought anything else. Rent, food, bus fare, utilities. She kept them in a kitchen drawer and wrote the remaining amount on the front in pencil. I looked down at my work bag. The envelopes in my purse were labeled almost the same way. I kept reading. When Grant was 11, his mother lost hours after a back injury. Medical bills came first, then a utility payment, then rent. They lost their apartment after falling behind and stayed with relatives for several months before she found another place. I found the original magazine issue in the library's digital archive. It included a photograph missing from the newer page. Grant looked about 12. He stood beside his mother outside a brick duplex. The caption identified her as Margaret Mercer. I saved the page. Subscribe to the channel and leave your reaction in the comments, because what I found next made Grant's silence in that leasing office much harder to dismiss. During lunch, I searched Mercer Housing Group's own website. Grant had repeated part of the same history in a founder's statement. He wrote that housing instability had shaped his decisions about tenant retention, predictable rent, and late fee practices. The company's public policy page said it favored transparent lease terms, clear notice of recurring charges, and early intervention before legal action. I opened the photograph of the notice taped to my door. The amount was $1,275. The base rent in my renewal was $1,080. It was no longer about whether Grant had a difficult childhood. His company was publicly promising one thing while the property under its name was doing another. I added both statements to my timeline with their sources. After work, I picked June up from the extended day program and we walked to the bus stop. She handed me a folded paper. I got 98. It was a math test. You missed one. I know. I added instead of subtracting. You caught it now. She smiled and put the paper back in her folder. Across Broadview Road, a black SUV was parked near the entrance to Briar Glen. I recognized Grant near the leasing office. He was speaking with 2 men. One wore a reflective vest. The other carried a tablet. June said, "That's the building man." "Yes." "Is he here because of us?" "I don't think so." The refinancing inspection had begun before he ever saw me at the counter. Grant looked toward the bus stop. For a second, I thought he had recognized me. Then one of the men handed him a page. Our bus arrived before anything else happened. On Thursday, February 12, 2026, I used my lunch break to search Cuyahoga County property records and Ohio business filings. Briar Glen did not appear under Mercer Housing Group directly. The parcel belonged to Briar Glen Owner LLC. That company linked to Mercer Residential Holdings, which sat under Mercer Housing Group. The structure itself was not unusual. What mattered was that Grant's name appeared in the parent company filings and on financing documents connected to Briar Glen. He was not a distant investor. His company controlled the building. The filings carried Mercer entities through the ownership chain. Briar Glen was not sitting inside a fund with no operational connection to him. I downloaded the records. Then I searched Northbridge Property Services. Northbridge managed several Mercer properties in Ohio. Its regional manager was Colin Bexley. I remembered Grant asking the clerk whether Colin still supervised Briar Glen. There was little public information on him. I saved the name and stopped there. When I returned to my desk, an email from Northbridge was waiting. Subject: disputed balance review. The message said my account had been reviewed and the charges were valid under current community policies. There was no lease citation, no signed addendum. At the bottom was one sentence. Failure to satisfy the full account balance could result in further action consistent with Ohio law and the terms of tenancy. I forwarded the email to myself and printed it. That evening, after June went to bed, I compared the message with archived versions of Briar Glen's tenant handbook. The current handbook had been uploaded in January. A section called Resident Services had not existed in the previous version. The new version listed package handling, online maintenance requests, document storage and resident communication services. Those services were not new to me. The portal had existed for years. Packages still went to the same mailroom, but the handbook included a line Northbridge had not sent me. Applicability may vary according to lease term and renewal date. My renewal date was November. If Northbridge believed my renewal activated the bundle, there should have been an addendum. I logged into the portal and downloaded every document associated with my renewal. 6 files. Renewal agreement, lead disclosure, utilities notice, parking rules, emergency contact form, electronic communication consent. Nothing about the bundle. I renamed each file with the download date and backed them up to an account Northbridge could not access. On Friday, February 13th, 2026, the hallway outside 3B smelled of floor cleaner when I opened the door for a maintenance worker. Calvin had come to replace a loose bathroom vent cover I had reported 2 weeks earlier. While he worked, June sat at the table eating cereal. Calvin glanced toward the papers near my laptop. "They get you with the new fee thing too." I looked at him. "What new fee thing?" He tightened one screw. I shouldn't have said anything. "You already did." He shrugged. "People have been calling the office." "How many?" "I don't know." "Enough." I did not push. After he left, I wrote down his exact words without his name. I did not want a maintenance worker dragged into a dispute because he had answered one question in my kitchen. Before my shift, I went to the public library and searched eviction filings connected to Briar Glen. January showed more filings than any other month in the previous 6. That alone proved nothing. I opened the available dockets. One case included a tenant ledger. The monthly rent was $9.25. The amount demanded included a $79 resident bundle, a $26 administration charge, a processing fee, and a late fee, the same structure as mine. The case had been filed 3 weeks before I stood at the counter. I copied the case number. I did not contact the tenant. Not yet. That afternoon, I returned to the business interview with Grant and read the entire piece. Near the end, the interviewer asked what changed when his company grew. Grant said he used to know every property manager by name. After expansion, he relied more on regional teams and third-party operators. The article was 6 years old. In a more recent interview, Grant spoke mostly about acquisitions, financing, and renovation costs. Tenants were mentioned once. I did not need to invent a motive. The record showed distance. He had built a company around a problem he understood personally, then grown far enough from daily operations that someone else could decide what appeared on my account. That did not make him innocent. When I got home, I checked the portal. The balance had changed again, 1,310. A new line had been added. Notice preparation fee, $35. I took screenshots and downloaded the updated ledger. A small icon appeared beside the document tab, Account Notes. I had never seen that section before. Only one note was visible. 213. Regional review pending. No name, no explanation. I printed the page. On Saturday, February 14th, 2026, June and I returned to the library. She went to the children's section, while I searched archived news for Margaret Mercer. Her obituary confirmed she had died in 2014 at 58 and had worked at the same Toledo nursing home named in Grant's interview. The dates matched. The obituary also placed her death 1 year before Mercer Housing Group announced its first large apartment acquisition. In later profiles, Grant credited that expansion with making him wealthy. Whatever money came afterward had arrived too late for the woman whose envelopes he still described in interviews. I saved only the published records. I had no reason to turn her life into evidence against her son. I closed the search. Then I found a video from a housing conference recorded in 2018. Grant was seated on a panel with 3 other developers. The moderator asked about late payments. Grant said, "A tenant who is short by a small amount is often dealing with a timing problem, not a character problem." He said companies made expensive mistakes when they treated every shortfall as deliberate non-payment, and that he favored human review before escalation. I wrote down the timestamp and saved the link. The same company now managing my apartment had refused the exact rent in my lease because an extra $120 had appeared on the account. 4 days later, I had a 3-day notice and another fee for the notice itself. June came back carrying 4 books. Outside the library, my phone rang. Briar Glen Leasing Office. I answered. Hello. Ms. Whitmore, this is Amanda. I remember. I'm calling because ownership requested a copy of your renewal documents. I stopped walking. What ownership? Mercer Housing Group. Why? I wasn't given details. Who requested them? I don't know. Was my account changed? Not that I can see. Is collection activity paused? I can't answer that. Please email me confirmation that ownership requested my renewal file. I'll see what I can send. The call ended. June was a few steps ahead of me. Are we missing the bus? No, keep walking. I saved the call log and wrote down Amanda's words. Someone from Grant's company was looking at my documents. That could help me. It could also give Northbridge time to repair its paperwork. On the bus, I opened the portal. The 6 renewal files were still there. Their dates were unchanged. I photographed the full list and downloaded everything again. On Sunday, February 15th, 2026, Amanda's email arrived. Ownership had requested a copy of my November renewal package for internal review. That was all it said. I saved it. Then I opened the January eviction filing again and compared that tenant ledger with mine. Same bundle, same administration fee, same processing charge, same notice preparation fee. I searched another docket, then another. One had no ledger, the next did. Same pattern. I now had 4 accounts, including mine. Not enough to call it a system, enough to stop calling it an isolated mistake. On Monday, February 16th, 2026, the tenant portal loaded slowly before work. For several seconds, the balance page was blank. Then the amount appeared, $1,310. No new fee. I clicked Account Notes. The regional review entry remained. A second note had been added. TO 16, hold request received. Legal export status, active. I read the line again. The word hold should have meant the account was being paused. The other half of the note said something was still moving. I took screenshots, downloaded the ledger, and emailed everything to myself before the portal could change. Then I opened the folder containing Grant Mercer's panel video. A company that publicly claimed to review small shortfalls before escalation had received a request to hold my account. The legal export was still active. I did not know yet where it had been sent. I knew enough not to wait for Northbridge to tell me after the next document appeared. The bus jerked away from the curb before June had both feet under her, and I caught her by the backpack strap before she slid off the seat. On Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, a little after 5 in the morning, the windows were dark with condensation, and the heater under our seats smelled faintly of dust. June leaned against my arm. You can sleep. I'm not tired. Her eyes were closed before the next stop. I held her backpack between my shoes and checked the transit app. We had 46 minutes before I needed to leave her at the extended day entrance near her school, then another bus across Cleveland before my contract shift began. A month earlier, the drive from Briar Glen to June's school had taken 12 minutes in my Ford. By bus, that first leg alone took almost 45. The car was still parked behind Briar Glen, with a white envelope under the windshield wiper from the transmission shop. The estimate inside was $3,480. At the next stop, I moved $20 from the grocery envelope into transportation and wrote the new totals on both fronts. June opened one eye. Did groceries lose again? Just 20. I can eat cereal. You're going to eat more than cereal. She closed her eye again. Subscribe to follow the story and leave your reaction in the comments, because the $120 on my rent account was only the last step in a much longer chain. 18 months earlier, I had worked full-time in medical billing for Lakeview Rehabilitation Network. I corrected claim codes, called insurers, and found missing information that kept treatment from being paid. Then Lakeview outsourced most of the department. Human Resources gave us severance packets and a list of contractors taking over portions of the work. I accepted one because I needed income immediately. The hourly rate looked close to what I had earned before. The job was not. There was no paid leave, no guaranteed 40-hour week, and no employer health contribution. If client volume dropped, my schedule dropped with it. At first I kept 38 hours, then 34. Then June's after-school program changed its pickup rules. On Thursday, September 11, 2025, I was outside her school when my supervisor called. "You left early again. I told scheduling yesterday. I know, the client still marks it as unavailable time. I'll finish the queue tonight." That's not how the contract is measured. The next schedule gave me 29 hours. By October, I had started taking evening shifts twice a week at Lake Erie Commercial Laundry. The work paid less, but it let me clock in after June's program started and leave before the extended hours room closed. Then the county recertification for her childcare subsidy stalled. I submitted pay statements. They asked for proof of variable hours. I sent schedules. They asked for a letter from the contract agency. The agency took 11 days to provide it. During that gap, my weekly childcare portion nearly tripled. I paid it because losing the program would have meant losing the evening work that paid for the program. By the time approval returned, the delay had cost me $412. The money did not come back at once. The bills had already moved. In December, the Ford began slipping between second and third gear. I stopped using the highway and drove only to work, school, groceries, and home. On Monday, January 12, 2026, it failed outside a pharmacy. The engine revved. The car barely moved. June sat in the back seat with her coat zipped to her chin while I called roadside assistance. The tow cost $146. The shop called the next afternoon. Transmission, how bad? Replacement, bad. The estimate was $3,480. I had $826 in savings. I paid the diagnostic bill, brought the car home, and started using buses. A 40-minute trip became 90. Grocery runs depended on how many bags I could carry. Late buses sometimes meant a rideshare, because the penalty for picking June up after closing cost more. None of those expenses destroyed us alone. Together, they removed the margin I used to protect the rent. On Wednesday, February 18, 2026, an email appeared while I was correcting rejected claims. Application status update. Mercy North Clinic. They wanted a first interview for a permanent billing specialist position. Full-time. Benefits. 2 remote days after training. I scheduled the earliest slot that did not interfere with June's pickup. I had applied to 21 permanent positions since November. This was number 22. At lunch, I checked Briar Glen's portal. The balance still showed $1,310. The note about the legal export was gone. I refreshed the page. Still gone. I opened the screenshot from 2 days earlier. 2/16. Hold request received. Legal export status active. The record had existed. Now the tenant-facing page no longer showed it. I saved the new screen and checked the county court search. No filing under my name yet. After work, I took June to the extended program and went to my laundry shift. Steam coated the loading doors. My shirt stuck to my back before I finished the first cart. At the end of the shift, I found a voicemail from Briar Glen. "Ms. Whitmore, this is Amanda. Colin Bexley will be on site tomorrow reviewing several resident accounts. If you would like to discuss your balance, he will be available during office hours." I listened twice. The regional manager Grant had named at the counter. I did not want a meeting. I did want to hear what Colin would say if he believed I knew only about my own account. On Thursday, February 19, 2026, I entered the leasing office with my lease, renewal, payment copies, and 3-day notice in a plain folder. Colin Bexley was sitting at the far end. He wore a navy suit and pale blue tie. A laptop was open in front of him. He stood when I gave my name. "Ms. Whitmore." "Mr. Bexley, I understand there's a dispute over your February balance." "There is." He opened my account. "I see you attempted payment." "Yes." "But it did not satisfy the total balance." "It satisfied the rent amount in my signed renewal." "The Resident Services Bundle applies to renewals processed under the updated community program. Can you show me where I accepted it?" "We're reviewing that." "So you don't have it here?" "I didn't say that." "Then I'd like a copy." Colin clicked through several screens. I also see ownership requested a temporary hold. Is the legal referral on hold? His fingers stopped. That process is handled separately. Separately from the account. By our legal vendor. I need that in writing. You've done a lot of documenting. It's my housing. His eyes moved to the edge of my folder. A white sheet had slipped out beneath the renewal. At the top was a printed court case number, not mine. It belonged to one of the January Briar Glen filings I had copied at the library. I had brought the wrong folder. Colin reached toward it. What's that? I pulled the folder back and slid the page underneath before he could read the tenant name. A billing appeal from work. Court filing. Medical reimbursement case. My contract job involved insurer appeals, often enough for the explanation to sound ordinary. He kept watching me. Your employer lets you take those home? De-identified training material. Amanda looked over from her desk. I closed the folder. The page had been visible for maybe 2 seconds. I did not know how much he had read. Colin returned to my account. I'm going to request the renewal package again. Ownership already requested it. I'm aware. Should I expect legal action while you review it? I can't give legal advice. I'm asking what Northbridge is doing. I'll have someone respond in writing. I stood. Then I'll wait for that. Outside, I walked past my building before opening the folder again. The January filing was still there. I folded it and moved it into the zippered pocket of my bag. A sheet of paper 2 inches too far out had almost shown Colin I was looking beyond my own balance. From then on, documents about other residents never entered the leasing office with me again. That afternoon, the Mercy North recruiter moved my interview to Monday because the hiring manager had an opening. Then I called June's childcare office to confirm she could stay through the full extended period. The administrator pulled up my account. Your subsidy renewal is approved through June, but there's still a reconciliation balance from the lapse. How much? $186. I thought I was current. You're current on weekly charges. That balance is from January. Can I pay it in installments? Yes, $25 every Friday. Do that. Another $25 left groceries each week. I wrote it on the envelope that night. June watched from the table. Is that for my school? For the after-school program? Because you work? Yes. I can stay home alone. No. I'm 8. Exactly. She frowned. I know how to use the microwave. You're still not staying home alone. On Friday, February 20th, 2026, Colin's written response arrived. Northbridge stated that my account was under review, and ownership had requested no additional property-level collection activity pending verification of my renewal. The phrase mattered. Property-level collection activity. It said nothing about the legal vendor. I replied asking whether the existing legal referral had been withdrawn. No answer came. At lunch, I searched the January case I had nearly shown Colin. A new filing had been added. The tenant had entered a payment agreement after the case began. The ledger contained the same charges now on my account. Resident Services Bundle, Administration, Processing, Notice Preparation, Late Fee. I opened another Briar Glen case. Same pattern. I created a spreadsheet on my personal laptop that evening. Unit, base rent, added charges, notice date, filing date, outcome. I used apartment numbers only. June colored beside me. What's that? Work I'm doing for our building. Is it your job? No. Do you get paid? No. She considered that. That's bad work. I laughed. Maybe. On Saturday, February 21st, 2026, I took the bus to the transmission shop with the original estimate folded in my bag. The Ford was still behind Briar Glen. I was there to ask whether there was a cheaper repair option. The mechanic handed me a revised estimate for a rebuilt unit. $2,640. Cheapest I'd put my name on. How long is the estimate good? 30 days. I need longer. Come back before it expires and I'll tell you if the parts price has changed. I thanked him and took the bus home. Without the car, I was spending more money and more time just getting through the same week. I put the estimate in a separate folder labeled Car. Housing documents stayed elsewhere. On Sunday, February 22nd, 2026, I reviewed every monthly statement from the previous year. January rent, $1,080. December, $1,080. November, the month of my renewal, $1,080. The bundle did not begin with my renewal. It appeared in February. That contradicted Colin's explanation. Then I opened the January tenant ledger from the court file. That resident had renewed in August 2025. The bundle appeared in January 2026. I checked another case. Renewal in July. Bundle added in January. A third resident was still under the original lease. Bundle added in January. 4 accounts now contradicted the claim that the charge simply activated at renewal. I still did not know who ordered it. On Monday, February 23, 2026, I sat for my Mercy North interview in a private room at the library. I wore the only blazer I owned and angled the laptop toward the bookshelves. The hiring manager asked how I handled conflicting documentation. I build a timeline, separate verified facts from assumptions, and never change a record because one version is easier. She smiled. That sounded practiced. It's how I work. The interview lasted 38 minutes. When it ended, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls, 2 from Briar Glen, 1 from an unfamiliar Cleveland number. The voicemail came from a man at a law firm handling landlord-tenant matters for Northbridge. He asked me to return the call regarding my account. I checked the county docket. My name was still absent. I saved the voicemail. That evening, after June went to bed, Northbridge emailed me a copy of my November renewal package. I compared it page by page with the copy I had downloaded before the dispute. The first 6 documents matched. There was now a 7th file. Resident Services Addendum. It carried my apartment number. It was dated in November. At the bottom was a signature line with my name typed beneath it. I opened my original folder. 6 files, no addendum. Then I checked the metadata on the new attachment. It had been created that afternoon. The addendum claimed to be 3 months old. I saved both versions in separate folders and backed them up. Someone inside Northbridge had just sent me a document that had not existed in my renewal package before Grant asked them to review it, and I still did not know whether the new file had been created to explain the fee or to prepare for what their legal vendor was about to do. The smell of hot detergent reached the hallway before I opened the laundry room door. On Saturday, February 28, 2026, at 9:17 in the morning, one washer was already shaking through its spin cycle, and June had spread her multiplication sheet across the folding table beside a basket of clean towels. I had just poured detergent into the second machine when the door opened behind me. Grant Mercer walked in with Amanda from the leasing office and 2 men carrying inspection equipment. I did not move toward him. He noticed me first. Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Mercer. One contractor continued toward the utility room. Amanda stayed near the entrance. Grant stepped closer. I've been trying to get a complete copy of your renewal. Northbridge sent me one. That depends which version you mean. The package I downloaded before this started had 6 files. The package Northbridge sent this week had 7. What was added? A resident services addendum. Signed? My name was typed under the signature line. I never signed it. Grant looked toward Amanda. Do you know about that? No. I have the original download dates, both packages and the file metadata, I said. Send them to me. I'll send them to the outside audit address if you give me one. I can do that. He lowered the tablet in his hand. I also saw the amount on your account. I can take care of the extra $120 today, so there's no risk while we sort this out. No. He waited. If you pay it, the record says the amount was owed. I can have the record corrected. Then correct the record first. What do you want done right now? I want my attempted payment of $1,080 treated as timely. I want every disputed charge separated from my rent balance, no new penalties, and I want the legal referral withdrawn, not just paused inside the property office. You saw the legal export. I saved it before the note disappeared. That referral should not have continued after the hold. But it did. I'll deal with it. I need written confirmation when it's actually withdrawn. He nodded. Subscribe to follow what happens next and leave your view in the comments. Refusing his money was the moment Grant stopped treating this as one missing payment and began looking at the system that created it. June dropped her pencil. Grant picked it up and handed it back. Her small notebook was open beside the worksheet, divided into school, snacks, and savings. "My mother did that," he said. "She used envelopes." "So does my mom," June said. I noticed. Grant turned back to me. "I approved a resident services program last year. It was supposed to be attached to specific new leases where the terms were disclosed before signing. I did not approve adding it to existing residents without consent." "Then someone changed the rule." "That's what I'm trying to establish. Colin told me it applied because I renewed in November. It did not. Northbridge later sent me an addendum dated November. I want that file. You'll have it." The contractors called him away. Before leaving, Grant emailed me the independent audit contact, Miriam Cole. When my laundry finished, I carried the basket upstairs with June and went directly to the leasing office. Amanda pulled up my account. "The system still shows the full balance. I'm not paying disputed charges." Grant came out from the back office. "Code the base rent manually," he said. My 2 money orders totaled exactly $1,080. Amanda accepted them. The first receipt showed partial payment. I slid it back. "That needs to be corrected." Grant said, "February base rent paid in full, effective February 6th, the date she first tendered payment." Amanda printed a corrected receipt. Grant also gave me a page stating that property-level collection activity was suspended and that Mercer Housing Group had directed Northbridge to withdraw any outside legal referral. I read it. "Directed is not withdrawn." "No," Grant said. "I'll send confirmation when the vendor provides it." On Monday, March 2nd, Miriam requested my original renewal package, Northbridge's later version, the ledger, and every addendum. I sent only my own records and kept my notes on other units separate. That evening, Northbridge sent another resident services notice. The November date was gone. The document now said the program became effective February 1st as a community-wide policy. My typed name had disappeared too. I placed the versions side by side. One had never been part of my renewal. One claimed I accepted the charge in November, and the newest claimed no individual acceptance was required. I sent all 3 to Miriam. On Tuesday, March 3rd, Mrs. Holloway knocked after dinner with a folded statement. They charged me extra too. Her February balance showed $945 in rent and the same additional $120. "Did you renew recently?" "Last summer." "Did you sign anything about this?" "No." "Keep your original." I scanned the statement with her permission. Before leaving, she mentioned the tenant from 2F. She moved last week. Her sister came with a van. The unit matched one of the court cases I had found. The ledger showed the same bundle and related charges. The case ended after possession returned to Briar Glen. The record did not explain why she left, so I did not invent a reason. On Wednesday, March 4th, I finished my second Mercy North interview in a private room at the public library. When I stepped into the lobby, Colin Bexley was standing beside the coffee kiosk. He noticed me before I could change direction. "Ms. Whitmore." "Mr. Bexley." His eyes moved to my laptop case. "Working?" "Job interview." "I hope it went well." "Thank you." He lifted his coffee. "I understand you've been sending documents to ownership." "I sent what the auditor requested." "The addendum issue is administrative. There are 3 versions now." His hand stopped. For 1 second, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Some forms were generated incorrectly during the policy update." "Which version was correct?" "That's being reviewed." My phone vibrated. I took it out automatically. A message preview filled the screen. "Mrs. Holloway, I found my January statement." Colin's eyes dropped. I turned the phone toward my coat before he could read more. "Are residents giving you their account records?" The question came too quickly. I had almost shown him exactly what I was doing. "No one has given me access to anything that belongs to Northbridge." "That isn't what I asked." "I'm not discussing another tenant's private documents." He watched me. "Good. Those records can be misunderstood without context." I put the phone away. "Then the audit can supply the context." I left before I said more. Outside, I waited until Colin drove away. Mrs. Holloway's January statement had none of the new charges. The extra $120 first appeared in February. I saved the copy under her unit number and removed her name. Colin now knew residents were speaking to me. He did not know how many. On Thursday, March 5th, Miriam scheduled a video call with me and Grant. We compared Ms. Whitmore's original November renewal package with the later file supplied by Northbridge, she said. Grant leaned closer. And? The original package contains 6 documents. The Resident Services Addendum was not one of them. I stayed quiet. The addendum carrying Ms. Whitmore's name was created on February 23rd. After I requested her renewal file, Grant said. Yes. Who created it? The originating credentials belong to a Northbridge administrative account. We are tracing the individual user. Was Leah's signature copied? No authenticated signature appears in the file. Her name was typed into a signature field. I asked about the February version. Created 2 days later, Miriam said. Miriam continued. We also confirmed that the fee was configured at the property level rather than attached only to qualifying new leases. How many tenants? Grant asked. We're still extracting the data. Only Briar Glen? We don't know yet. Grant asked whether my legal referral had been withdrawn. Northbridge reports that it has, Miriam said. Do you have confirmation from the law firm? I asked. Not yet. Grant said his counsel would contact the vendor directly. After the call, the county docket still showed nothing under my name. That did not prove a complaint had never been prepared. On Friday, March 6th, Grant was waiting near the mailboxes when June and I returned home. He handed me a preservation notice from the auditors. Northbridge was instructed not to delete, edit, replace or reclassify records connected to the Resident Services bundle. You think more records might change. We know yours changed. Did the legal vendor answer? My counsel is waiting on written confirmation. He paused. The review is expanding. To what? Another property managed by Northbridge has the same fee configuration. How did you find it? The audit searched the billing code. RSB 79? Yes. Grant folded his copy. I should have known how that program was being used. You should have had a system that told you. I agree. He did not ask me to excuse him. On Saturday, March 7th, Mrs. Holloway, a man from 4C and a woman from the East Wing, ended up in the laundry room with statements showing similar charges. No one called it a meeting. People had simply started comparing bills. Keep your originals, save the portal pages, write down dates, I said. Amanda entered with maintenance notices. Everyone stopped talking. Her eyes passed over the papers before she left. 10 minutes later, Northbridge emailed all residents warning against circulating account records containing personal information. I saved it. On Monday, March 9th, Miriam sent me the written response from Northbridge's outside legal vendor. My account had been referred on February 16th. Grant's first hold request reached Northbridge that same day. The referral was not recalled until March 6th. The vendor had already prepared a draft complaint, though nothing had been filed with the court. There was a second attachment, a spreadsheet exported from Northbridge's regional collection system. Miriam wrote that I was receiving only the portion related to my account. My unit appeared on row 14. The columns listed base rent, disputed charges, notice status, referral date, and revenue recovery priority. Mine was marked high. At the far left was the file creation date, January 26, 2026. 11 days before my rent had been refused. I scrolled to the edge of the page. A hidden column had been restored during the audit. Its heading was Regional Approval. The initials beside my unit were CB Colin Bexley had approved my account for aggressive recovery before I ever knew the extra $120 existed. Don't print that one. On Wednesday, March 11th, 2026, at 6:42 in the evening, I reached across the library table and stopped Mrs. Holloway before she sent a tenant ledger to the public printer. She looked at me over her glasses. Why? It has your social security number on the footer. She cancelled the job. June was 2 tables away with headphones on, finishing a reading assignment. The man from 4C sat across from me with 3 months of statements. The woman from the East Wing had brought photographs of notices taped to her door. No one had called us a committee. We were 4 tenants comparing paper. That was enough to show a pattern. Mrs. Holloway's base rent had not changed, neither had the man's. The woman from the East Wing had renewed in July. All three received the same $79 bundle in February, followed by the same administration and processing charges. I created a worksheet with unit numbers only: base rent, renewal date, first appearance of bundle, additional fees, notice issued, legal referral. The Northbridge spreadsheet had already shown Colin approving my account for high priority recovery on January 26th. Now I needed to know whether the same sequence appeared elsewhere. The man from 4C slid over a notice. This came before I was late. His February payment was due on the 1st. The notice had been generated on January 29th. The new charges were loaded before the month began. "Keep the original," I said. Mrs. Holloway watched me type. "You do this for your job? My job is finding why numbers don't match." Subscribe and add your reaction in the comments. Once the numbers from other apartments lined up, the $120 on my account stopped looking accidental. On Thursday, March 12th, Miriam Cole sent me a restricted audit summary. Mercer Housing Group had expanded the review beyond Briar Glen. Northbridge managed 11 Mercer properties in Ohio. The RSB 79 billing code appeared at everyone. 342 active accounts had received the bundle. 211 also received an administration charge. 78 had been assessed notice fees. 31 had been sent to outside legal vendors. Grant joined a call that afternoon. "I approved this program for new leases at 4 properties," he said. "How did it reach 11? That's what the audit is tracing. Who could change the billing rules?" Northbridge could configure property charges within contract limits. They were not authorized to rewrite leases. Did someone at Mercer approve the expansion? We haven't answered that yet. Miriam shared an internal Northbridge memo from October 2025 describing a goal called ancillary revenue optimization. Property managers were encouraged to increase non-rent revenue per occupied unit. Regional bonuses depended partly on hitting those targets. Colin's region had exceeded its target in January. Another document showed a quarterly call with Mercer's operations department. The attendee list included Philip Keene, Mercer Housing Group's chief operating officer. Miriam said, "We don't yet have evidence that Mr. Keene approved application of the fee to existing leases. But he attended the call where the revenue target was discussed." "Yes." Grant asked for the recording and meeting notes. I added Philip beneath Colin in my timeline. Not as guilty, as connected. On Friday, March 13th, Mercy North Clinic left me a voicemail asking for references. It was the first good news in weeks unrelated to housing. I sent the list that night. Then I checked my tenant page. My base rent showed paid. The disputed amount remained frozen. No new penalty had appeared. I still saved a copy. On Saturday, March 14th, while June attended a school art program, I searched public eviction records for the other Mercer properties named in the audit. At one address in Palmer, filings rose after January. At another in Lakewood, they did not. A third showed 6 cases within 9 days. The records did not tell me why. I listed case numbers and stopped there. When I returned home, a Northbridge employee was taping a notice near the mailboxes. Account privacy reminder. It warned residents against distributing statements, leases, or payment histories because they might contain personal information. Amanda saw me reading it. It went to every Northbridge property. Did Colin send it? I don't know. I photographed it. The warning itself was reasonable. The timing was worth preserving. On Monday, March 16th, the outside auditors requested an interview with Mrs. Holloway. I called before passing along her number. "You don't have to talk to them." "I want to. Give them copies, keep the originals. You've told me that 4 times, that then you'll remember." That evening, someone knocked on my apartment door. It was Colin. I left the chain on. "Can I help you?" "I'm doing resident outreach." He held a folder against his side. "We're trying to resolve confusion created by the fee review. I'm working with the independent auditor." "I know." His eyes moved past me toward the kitchen. My laptop was open on the table. The screen displayed the worksheet from the library. 11 property names ran down the first column. I stepped sideways. Too late. "What's that?" "Work." "That looks like property data." It isn't Northbridge data. Where did you get those property names? I closed the laptop. Most were publicly listed, but saying that would confirm what I was comparing. I'm in the middle of dinner. His expression stayed polite. If residents are compiling records across properties, inaccurate conclusions can interfere with the audit. I'm not interfering with anything. Then there shouldn't be a problem explaining what you're collecting. I'm not discussing my personal files with Northbridge. He handed me a notice directing residents to a centralized billing review team. I suggest using official channels. I already am. I closed the door. The next morning, I moved the worksheet out of the apartment. One encrypted copy went to a cloud account. Another went to a flash drive in my work locker. Colin now knew I was looking beyond Briar Glen. He did not know how much I had. On Tuesday, March 17th, Miriam sent another set of documents. A Northbridge performance report ranked ancillary revenue by property. Colin's region had moved from 6th place to 2nd in 1 quarter. Beside his name was an estimated bonus of $18,400. Below it was an email chain from December. A Northbridge analyst had warned that several resident charges appeared without matching addenda in the document system. Colin replied the next morning, "Proceed under community policy unless ownership instructs otherwise." The email had been preserved from Northbridge's server. Grant called later. I saw Colin's response. So he knew paperwork was missing. He knew there were mismatches. And continued. Yes. Did Philip know? We're reviewing his communications. Why is that taking longer? Because Mercer's internal messages are more extensive, and I told Miriam to review mine too. That caught me. Yours? If I missed something, it belongs in the report. I wrote that down after we hung up. On Wednesday, March 18th, Mercy North offered me the permanent billing position. The salary was steady, full-time hours, health coverage the following month, 2 remote days each week after probation. June stood beside me at the bus stop while I read the offer. Is that the new job? Yes. Can we fix the car? Not yet. But later. Later. I accepted that night. My start date was April 6th. I recalculated the childcare balance and the transmission estimate. The numbers still did not work. They were closer. On Thursday, March 19th, the audit widened again. Miriam sent a summary of complaints Northbridge had received during the previous 6 months. There had been 47 written complaints related to unexplained resident charges across the 11 properties. 29 were closed with template responses. 9 resulted in partial credits. 5 tenants moved before their disputes were resolved. 4 files lacked a clear outcome. I recognized the template language. Standard property charge. Miriam also found that Colin had forwarded a complaint summary to Philip Keane in January. Philip replied with 6 words. Keep revenue initiatives within approved parameters. The sentence did not prove whether he objected to the method or knew exactly how it worked. The evidence stopped there. On Friday, March 20th, Grant was outside Briar Glen when June and I returned from the bus. He waited until we crossed the parking lot. The audit found another internal report. About the bundle? About legal referrals. He handed me a redacted page. The document ranked accounts by recovery probability. Residents with recent late payments, variable income, or prior payment arrangements received higher collection scores. My account had been flagged because I had paid on the final permitted day twice during the previous year. I had never missed a month. The system treated being close to the deadline as a reason to pressure me sooner. Grant said, I didn't know this model existed. Who did? Northbridge used it. Mercer received monthly delinquency reports. We don't yet know who inside my company saw the scoring method. Philip? He's part of the review. I folded the page before June could read it. Grant continued. Miriam found a folder on Mercer's internal server that Northbridge should never have been able to create. Whose folder? Philip Keane's. He did not tell me what was inside. On Monday, March 23rd, Miriam scheduled a formal audit meeting for the following morning. Grant would attend. Mercer's outside counsel would be there. Philip had been ordered to preserve his files and appear. The agenda arrived shortly before bed. Item 1. Resident Services Authorization. Item 2. Revenue Targets. Item 3. Legal recovery scoring. Item 4 was marked confidential. I opened the attached index. The confidential section contained 14 documents. 13 file names were redacted. 1 was visible. Briar Glen Refinance Revenue. Adjustment. JALIS. The file had been created 3 weeks before Grant stood behind me at the leasing counter. The author field carried Philip Keen's name. The conference room door was already closing when I reached it. On Tuesday, March 24, 2026, at 8:56 in the morning, Miriam Cole held it open while I signed the visitor sheet. Grant Mercer sat at the far end of the table. Philip Keen was 2 chairs away from him with a legal pad. Colin Bexley had been placed across from me. 2 attorneys and an accountant were there. Miriam put 3 documents on the screen. My November renewal package, the addendum Northbridge created after Grant requested my records, the February policy notice that replaced it. The original package contains no resident services addendum, she said. The second file was created on February 23rd and dated as if it existed in November. The third changes the stated basis for the charge. Philip looked at Colin. Who created the second file? Administrative staff were reconstructing missing documentation. Miriam said, nothing was missing. The server history shows that file did not exist. Grant looked at Colin. Answer her. The property team believed the charge had been disclosed during renewal. I kept my hands on the folder in front of me. Miriam brought up the December email warning that several resident charges lacked matching addenda. Colin's reply appeared underneath it. Proceed under community policy unless ownership instructs otherwise. Grant said, you knew the paperwork wasn't there. I knew there were documentation gaps. And you kept billing people. We had a community policy. Miriam changed the screen to the later addendum carrying my typed name. I said, then why create that? One of the attorneys raised a hand. Let's keep questions through Ms. Cole. I stopped. This was the first time Colin and Philip were facing the record in the same room with me. I did not need to turn it into a shouting match. Subscribe for the rest of the story and leave your reaction in the comments. That morning, the $120 charge stopped being only a tenant issue. It had been built into the numbers Grant's company was using to borrow money. Miriam opened the file recovered from Philip's server. Briar Glen Refinance. Revenue. Adjustment. Check cell SX. The accountant explained the columns. Base rent, ancillary revenue, projected annual income, occupancy, debt service coverage. The resident services charges were included in projected recurring revenue. Grant looked at Philip. When was this prepared? January. For the refinancing package? For internal modeling? Was it sent to the lender? Philip hesitated. A version was included in preliminary materials. The accountant said that across the properties in the borrowing pool, disputed ancillary charges represented roughly $291,000 in annualized projected revenue. Grant asked, did you know RSB 79 was being placed on existing leases? I knew resident service participation was expanding. That is not what I asked. Miriam displayed an email dated January 8th. A Northbridge analyst had sent Philip a sheet titled Legacy Lease Conversion Gaps. The message warned that residents were being billed without signed service addenda and asked whether the program should pause. Philip had replied that revenue targets should remain in place while Northbridge resolved documentation at the property level. Grant read it. You knew charges were being posted before the documentation was fixed. I knew there were paperwork gaps. You told them to keep the revenue target. I expected them to cure the gaps. By getting consent, that was my expectation. Miriam returned to my file. The addendum created in February remained on the screen. Colin said, that document was never intended to misrepresent a signature. Grant turned toward him. My tenant received it as part of what you represented as her November renewal package. It was an administrative correction. It was created 3 months later. No one raised a voice. Miriam paused the meeting and asked me to review the resident examples she planned to use next. I opened my folder at the side table. The first page contained coded unit numbers. Miriam had removed the names before giving me the packet. Colin walked behind me toward the hallway and stopped when he saw one rent amount beside a July renewal date. That's East Wing, isn't it? I covered the page. The combination was specific enough that he was trying to identify the resident without seeing a name. I'm reviewing coded examples. Which unit is that? You can ask Miriam. I'm asking you. The residents were told Northbridge would not receive their identities through me. His eyes stayed on the figures. You've been coordinating them. I've been telling people to keep their own paperwork, Miriam returned. I handed the packet back. Can you present these as ranges instead of exact rent amounts? Yes. She replaced the examples with an aggregated table before the meeting resumed. Colin had nearly identified one resident from the numbers alone. After that, Miriam kept the source list and used ranges whenever Northbridge representatives were present. When the meeting resumed, she showed examples from 5 properties, different rents, different renewal months, the same fee code, the same extra charges, the same collection sequence. Grant asked, how many legal referrals were tied partly to these fees? 31 confirmed. How many filed cases? 17. How many residents moved before the cases ended? 6 confirmed, possibly more. Can we dismiss every active case? Cases controlled by your entities can be reviewed for dismissal, Miriam said. That does not erase the filing itself, judgments already entered or payment agreements. Grant looked at his attorney. What about sealing records? That requires court action. We can support appropriate motions. We cannot order a court to remove a case. Money could refund fees and pay lawyers. It could not give the woman from 2F back the move she had already endured or make a public filing disappear, because Grant changed his mind. Miriam continued. The lender also received a revenue model containing charges that may not be enforceable under the underlying leases. Philip leaned forward. The model was preliminary. Grant said, did they rely on it? We don't know yet. We are telling them. Philip looked at him. Before materiality is established? Yes. That could freeze the refinancing. Yes. It may trigger review of the entire borrowing pool. I know. Philip glanced at the attorneys. We should understand exposure before volunteering conclusions. Grant answered, we are not withholding the document while we decide whether admitting it is expensive. The meeting ended with preservation requirements covering billing records, tenant files, legal referrals, and financing materials. Near the elevators, Grant caught up with me. I should have caught this. You already said that. The financing file changes what I have to disclose. Your responsibility existed before the financing file. He nodded. My name was on a recovery list before I even saw the fee. I know. And Colin knew the documents were missing. Yes. So residents do not wait while your company protects the refinancing. They won't. Then don't promise anything that still depends on Philip or Northbridge. Grant did not answer. On Wednesday, March 25th, Miriam confirmed that the lender had been notified. The refinancing was placed on temporary hold. Mercer Housing Group also ordered every Northbridge-managed property to stop posting new resident services charges. My own portal changed from $230 disputed to $0 due. The old entries remained visible in the ledger rather than being deleted. I saved the new version. The next afternoon, Mercy North confirmed my April 6th start date. June read the email over my shoulder. So the job is real now? Yes. Can we fix the car? Not yet. She pointed toward the transmission estimate clipped to the refrigerator. Soon? Sooner than before. On Friday, March 27th, Northbridge sent residents a general notice saying certain charges were under review. It did not mention the altered addendum. It did not mention legal referrals. That evening, Miriam called. Northbridge drafted an immediate credit agreement for affected residents. What does the agreement require? A release of claims connected to the disputed charges. And confidentiality? Yes. My own draft arrived 10 minutes later. The offered credit was $230 in exchange for releasing Northbridge and related parties from claims tied to the charges. I did not sign it. On Monday, March 30th, Colin called. I understand you received the resolution agreement. I did. It gives you a clean closure. My account already shows zero due. The agreement finalizes the credit. I'm not signing a release. It's standard language. I'm still not signing it. You may be creating unnecessary complications for yourself. That sounds like advice. Put anything else in writing. I ended the call and saved his follow-up email describing the offer as voluntary. Grant called the next day. I heard about the releases. Did you approve them? No. Your company is listed among the released parties. Northbridge Legal drafted them. I told them to withdraw the forms. Have they been withdrawn? Not yet. Then they still exist. On Wednesday, April 1st, Miriam confirmed the program had been suspended before anyone at Briar Glen signed. 3 tenants at another property had already returned agreements. Mercer's counsel was reviewing those. Even after the company decided to correct something, the earlier machinery kept producing consequences. The following day, the lender requested a new income calculation excluding disputed fees. The revised figures weakened the refinancing enough that Mercer Housing Group would need additional equity to proceed. That afternoon, Miriam sent me another email recovered from Philip's account. It was dated January 23rd, 3 days before my apartment was placed on the high-priority recovery list. Subject: Briar Glen Revenue Gap. Most of the message concerned occupancy and the upcoming financing review. One paragraph was highlighted: Accelerate collectible ancillary revenue before month-end. We need the run rate reflected in February reporting. Colin replied beneath it: Understood. Existing resident population gives us the fastest path. I read both lines again. The new charges had not spread because someone misunderstood one lease. Existing tenants had been the fastest available source of revenue before the refinancing numbers were measured. At the bottom of Miriam's message was a note. A second email from Philip had been recovered from deleted mail. Counsel was reviewing it before distribution because it referred directly to pending tenant cases. The attachment was withheld. Only the subject line was visible. Do not pause legal. Rainwater had soaked through the edge of my folder before I reached the courthouse doors. On Monday, April 13th, 2026, at 8:34 in the morning, I stood under the stone overhang of Cleveland Housing Court with Mrs. Holloway beside me and a plastic sleeve around the papers I had carried since February. My own case had never been filed. 3 other Briar Glen residents were not as lucky. One had an active eviction complaint. Another had entered a payment agreement that included the disputed fees. The third had already moved and wanted to know whether the filing could follow her to another apartment. Grant arrived without an assistant. Miriam Cole came with 2 attorneys from a legal aid organization Mercer had agreed to fund without controlling. That condition mattered. If Grant's company had helped create the problem, residents needed lawyers who did not answer to him. Subscribe and leave your reaction in the comments. The decision Grant made that week cost his company far more than the $120 he first offered me. The deleted email from Philip Keene had been released 3 days earlier. Northbridge had asked whether legal referrals should pause while missing lease documentation was reviewed. Philip answered, Do not pause legal. Maintain recovery schedule. Documentation can be cured in parallel. Colin was copied. They had known the paperwork was incomplete and kept collection moving anyway. Inside the courthouse, I sat with the tenant from 4C while his attorney reviewed the ledger. The disputed bundle created a balance. That balance triggered added fees and became part of the amount listed in the complaint. The attorney circled the lines. This is why we don't just subtract $79 and call it fixed. Grant heard her and said nothing. The landlord's attorney filed a notice dismissing the active possession claim Mercer controlled. That ended the pending claim, but it did not erase the filing or automatically seal the record. The other cases required separate motions and supporting audit records. Grant signed an affidavit confirming the findings. Outside, Grant stopped near the courthouse steps. I terminated Northbridge this morning. Effective when? 30 days. We need a transition team before they leave the properties. And Colin? Removed from every Mercer account. What about Philip? He's no longer Chief Operating Officer. Resigned. Terminated. Grant said he was sending the complete findings to the lender. You already disclosed the revenue issue, not the deleted email. That could affect the refinancing. It probably will. He did not ask me to admire the decision. That afternoon, Mercer Housing Group notified residents at all 11 affected properties. The bundle was suspended. Related fees were under review. Refunds would not require releases. Independent legal help was available, and prior court cases would be examined individually. There was no photograph of Grant and no mention of me. I saved the notice. On Tuesday, April 14th, my supervisor at Mercy North handed me an access badge and training materials. I had started the permanent job the week before. My schedule was fixed. Health coverage would begin May 1st. After 90 days, I could work from home twice a week. During lunch, I checked my bank account. My first full paycheck had not arrived. Bus fares, childcare, food, and the transmission repair still existed. The job had not made those costs disappear. It had made the next deposit predictable. June was waiting in the extended day room when I picked her up. She held up a paper calendar. I marked your late work days. There were only 2. At home, I paid another $25 toward the childcare balance. On Wednesday, April 15th, Miriam asked me to attend a resident review meeting at Briar Glen. I arrived with a notebook, not the coded spreadsheet. Colin was in the lobby packing files into archive boxes, under supervision from a transition manager. "You got what you wanted," he said. "I wanted the charges explained." "You wanted ownership involved." "Their name was already on the building." He placed a file in the box. "Residents think every balance they ever had is going to disappear. I never told anyone that. You've been organizing them. I've been preserving documents." His eyes dropped to my notebook. "So you still have copies of internal material?" "Anything I received came from the auditors, public records, or residents themselves." He stepped closer. "What about the recovery spreadsheet?" I almost answered too quickly. Miriam had sent me only the section containing my own account. If I implied I had seen the full file, Colin could accuse me of having information I had never received. I saw my row. "You knew other units were on it." The page showed row numbers, and the audit discussed the program. He studied me. He was trying to get me to claim access I did not have. I closed the notebook. "Questions about audit distribution go to Miriam." The transition manager called him away. I entered the meeting without giving him anything else. Inside, 15 residents sat around folding tables. Grant took a chair near the wall instead of the head. Miriam explained the remediation plan. Every affected account would be recalculated from the signed lease. Money paid toward unauthorized fees would be returned or credited. Related legal cases would receive independent review. No resident would have to waive claims to receive money already determined to have been wrongly collected. A man asked who would decide which charges were improper. "Independent auditors and counsel using the lease documents," Miriam said. Grant did not answer for her. On Friday, April 17th, my first full paycheck arrived. I paid the remaining childcare reconciliation balance and called the transmission shop. "Do you still have the rebuilt unit estimate?" It went up $80. "I can put $800 down at the end of the month. Can I pay the rest in 2 installments?" "If the first payment clears, yes." I wrote the arrangement beside the estimate. June listened from the kitchen. "Does that mean the car is coming back?" "It means I can start fixing it." I did not call Grant or ask whether Mercer had a vehicle program. The car had been my problem before I met him. The repair would come from my paycheck. On Monday, April 20th, the final internal audit went to Mercer's board. Miriam sent me the resident findings section. The preliminary March totals had grown after the auditors recovered older referral exports and closed files that had not appeared in the first review. 342 households had received the bundle. 276 accounts required adjustment. 41 legal referrals were connected partly to charges the auditors could not match to signed lease terms. 23 cases had reached court. 7 households had already surrendered possession. Refunds could not return those 7 families to the apartments they had already emptied. Grant called that evening. "I'm creating a resident oversight panel." "Who appoints it?" "Residents elect 6 members. 1 seat goes to an outside housing advocate. Mercer gets 1 non-voting representative." "What can the panel see?" "Fee schedules, notice templates, collection changes, and monthly legal referral counts." "Before new recurring charges start?" "Yes." I agreed to help prepare the first election notice, but refused when Grant suggested I become chair automatically. Let residents choose. On Wednesday, April 22nd, Philip's attorney responded to the audit. Philip admitted authorizing continued revenue targets, but denied directing false addenda. Colin denied personally altering resident records. Miriam's report stated only what the server history proved. My addendum was created after the dispute began through Northbridge credentials and later presented as part of my November renewal. The evidence did not need a confession. On Friday, April 24th, Mercer established a fixed fund to reimburse an independent legal aid organization for affected tenants. I read the agreement before trusting the announcement. Mercer could not choose which residents received advice. The lawyers did not report their strategy to the company. The lender still had not cleared the refinancing. A revised appraisal and income model were required. Mercer would need to contribute several $1 million in additional equity if the transaction continued. Grant told the board he would. He also eliminated the bonus formula tied to ancillary revenue per unit and divided Philip's former responsibilities between compliance and property operations. On Monday, April 27th, I returned to housing court with the woman who had lived in 2F. Her name was Rebecca Nolan. She had moved with her teenage son into her sister's apartment in Parma. "I thought I was the only one," she said. "You weren't." Her attorney had evidence that disputed charges were included in the balance stated before she surrendered the unit. The court did not erase the filing that day. Counsel submitted a motion with the audit documents. Rebecca had to wait for a ruling. Grant sat several benches away. He approached only after her lawyer asked whether she wanted to speak with him. She declined. Grant left her alone. On Thursday, April 30th, I made the first transmission payment. The shop arranged a tow from Briar Glen and gave me a completion window in May. I crossed out the old estimate on the refrigerator and wrote the new balance underneath. June drew our Ford beside it. On Saturday, May the 2nd, the first resident panel election was held in Briar Glen's community room. Mrs. Holloway won one seat. The man from 4C won another. I was elected with 38 votes. Grant stayed only long enough to confirm the panel's access rights. Our first item was a proposed parking policy change. It was boring. That was the point. We were seeing a policy before anyone could quietly turn it into another charge. After the meeting, Miriam found me near the door. The lender accepted the revised income package. So the refinancing is moving. With conditions. Independent compliance review for 12 months, quarterly reporting and no recognition of disputed ancillary revenue. She handed me another page. There's something else. The audit had found a complaint from a building Northbridge managed for a different owner almost a year earlier. The sequence was familiar. Unexpected bundle, administration fee, refused base rent payment, legal escalation. At the bottom was a forwarding record. Colin had received the complaint. He sent it to Philip Keane 11 months before my account was flagged. Philip's response contained one sentence: use the Cleveland Portfolio Pilot and report the recovery rate. The program Grant believed had spread without his knowledge had existed before Briar Glen. And the audit had just found the document showing where the pilot actually started. The fourth envelope did not exist in February. On Monday, August 10th, 2026, at 6:38 in the morning, I wrote emergency across the front of it, counted 6 $20 bills, and slid them inside. $120. June was at the kitchen counter pouring cereal while my work laptop connected to Mercy North Clinic. You counted that twice. 3 times. Why? Because I like the number. She looked at the envelope. That's the money from the rent thing. It's the same amount. But now it's ours. Yes. 6 months earlier, $120 had been enough to stop the leasing office from accepting my rent. Now it was the first amount in a reserve that did not already belong to transportation, groceries, childcare, or a repair bill. Nothing else in the apartment looked dramatically different. We still lived in 3B. The couch was the same. The kitchen table still had the scratch where June once dropped a metal bottle. My life had not become expensive. It had become predictable. Subscribe to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comments, because the part of this story that stayed with me was not the day Grant offered money. It was what changed after the emergency was over. Mercy North had moved me to 2 remote days each week after my probation ended in July. I had paid off the old childcare balance in April, and in May, the county renewed June's subsidy beyond June without another interruption. The Ford came back from the transmission shop on May 21st. I paid the final installment in July. It still had a dent near the rear passenger door and made a small clicking sound when the air conditioner started. June called it the best car in Ohio. I let her keep that opinion. That morning, I drove her to school before work. The old Northbridge sign at Briarglen was gone. Mercer had brought management of the 11 affected buildings under a new internal division while the compliance review continued. Mrs. Holloway had warned, "Moving the problem from one company name to another doesn't fix it." Grant answered, "Then measure us." So we did. Every recurring charge now required a lease reference, effective date, and written disclosure. Every notice generated by the billing system received human review before legal referral. Monthly reports separated rent from every other source of property income. The council received a simplified copy. None of those rules were dramatic. That was why I trusted them more than promises. On Wednesday, August 12th, Miriam sent the updated resident review. 276 accounts had been corrected across the 11 Mercer properties. Refunds and credits totaled a little over $214,000. 23 court cases had been identified for individual review. 14 had been dismissed or resolved with amended balances. 6 former tenants had obtained orders sealing records connected to disputed charges. 3 matters remained open. Rebecca Nolan's case was one of the 6 sealed. She had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Parma after finding work closer to her sister. She told me herself. Her message said, "My landlord approved me this morning. I deleted the copy of her old filing from my personal folder. It was no longer mine to hold. The audit also confirmed where the Cleveland pilot began." The older complaint Miriam had found came from a Northbridge property owned by another investment group. Colin had tested the same fee and recovery structure there, reported the results to Philip, and later expanded the model into Mercer-managed buildings. Philip had received performance reports from that earlier program. The evidence did not show Grant knew the method. It showed Philip did. Northbridge terminated Colin after its own investigation. Philip remained out of Mercer Housing Group. Their attorneys disputed parts of the audit. No one confessed. The records were enough. On Friday, August 14th, the resident council met in Briarglen's community room. The agenda included parking permits, laundry room repairs, a package locker proposal, legal referral statistics, and the quarterly billing review. Grant attended for the first 40 minutes and sat near the wall. The package locker proposal included a monthly technology fee. Mrs. Holloway raised her hand. "No." The room laughed. The vendor representative explained that the service would be optional. I asked for the contract language. Optional meant residents had to enroll. No enrollment meant no charge. The council approved the trial only after that sentence was added to the notice. It took 12 minutes. 6 months earlier, nobody had asked us before $120 appeared. After the meeting, Grant waited while I packed my notes. "You still use the envelopes?" "Yes." "How many now?" "4." He nodded. My mother never had one marked emergency. I knew what that envelope meant to him without making him explain it. He picked up his folder. "The lender closes next week." "The refinancing?" "Yes." "With the corrected numbers?" "With the corrected numbers." "And the additional equity?" "I funded it." Removing the disputed revenue forced him to contribute several $1,000,000 of additional equity. I did not thank him for it. He had exposed the error, but he had also owned the company while it grew. Before leaving, he said, "We're keeping the outside audit for another year." Good. On Monday, August 17th, I received my performance review from Mercy North. My supervisor rated me highest in documentation accuracy and asked whether I would help train 2 new billing specialists in October. I accepted. The increase was modest, but enough to raise what I transferred to savings each payday. That evening, June sat on the floor sorting patches from her old purple backpack. It had finally torn beyond repair. "I need a new bag." "You do. Can I get blue?" "Yes." With the front pocket? If it fits your school stuff. The next Saturday we bought one. I paid for it without moving money out of another envelope. I noticed because 6 months earlier, I noticed every dollar that moved. Some habits stayed useful after the emergency ended. On Tuesday, August 18th, the council received a request from a new tenant named Brooke Price. She had moved into 1D 2 weeks earlier and found a $35 document preparation charge on her account. She brought me her lease. The fee was printed in the move-in section as a one-time charge. "So it's valid," she said. "It appears disclosed here. Ask management to confirm it is one time." She looked disappointed. I thought we caught another one. Not every fee is wrong. The next morning, management confirmed it. The council closed the issue. We had demanded evidence from Northbridge. We could not call every future charge misconduct simply because we had learned to be suspicious. On Thursday, August 20th, Miriam met me at the library with a list of records I no longer needed to retain. The intensive phase of the audit was ending. The list included duplicate notices, altered addenda, and court ledgers I no longer needed. That night, I deleted copies containing other tenants' information when there was no longer a reason to keep them. My own documents stayed. So did the timeline. June watched me feed paper into a small shredder. "You're throwing it away." "Some of it." "Is everything done?" "Most of what was ours is." On Saturday, August 22nd, I drove to the grocery store instead of taking the bus. The trip took 9 minutes. At checkout, the total was $7 higher than I expected. I paid it without putting anything back. When I got home, I still wrote the amount on the grocery envelope. The habit now helped me see where the money went. On Monday, August 24th, the council received an update on the final 3 tenant cases. 1 former tenant's record had been sealed. 1 current resident still required another hearing. The 3rd belonged to a former resident the legal aid team had been unable to locate. Mercer had issued the refund to the last forwarding address, but the check came back. Mrs. Holloway read the update beside me. "So there's still somebody who doesn't know." Yes. The council voted to let the independent lawyers continue searching through lawful public records. Grant's company would pay the cost, but the lawyers controlled the work. That afternoon, I stopped at the Briar Glen office to deliver signed council minutes. A woman stood at the same counter, where my money orders had been pushed back in February. She had a toddler in a stroller and an open phone in her hand. The employee pointed toward the screen. "I'm showing an amount different from what you expected." The woman noticed me waiting. "I'm sorry. You're fine." The employee recognized me. "Leah, can you explain the resident review process?" I looked at the woman. "Only if you want the information." She nodded. I did not ask how much money she had. I did not reach for my purse. I showed her where the lease summary listed base rent and recurring charges. I gave her the council contact card and showed her the email address that created a written record. If the numbers don't match, save the screen before anything changes. The employee printed her ledger. The discrepancy turned out to be a utility adjustment from the previous billing period, not another hidden bundle. She left with a copy and a date for review. No one refused her rent. No notice appeared on her door. No wealthy owner needed to stand behind her. When I got home, June was at the kitchen table with the new blue backpack hanging from her chair. I opened the drawer. Rent, transportation, groceries, emergency. The 4th envelope still held $120. I added $20 from my latest paycheck and closed the drawer. Grant's lender completed the refinancing later that week using corrected income. Mercer Housing Group continued quarterly reporting. The council kept meeting. Some former tenants were still waiting on court decisions or reimbursement paperwork. Nothing returned the time they had already lost, but the process that created those charges no longer operated where residents could not see it. 6 months earlier, I had stood at a counter with the exact rent in my hand and been told it was not enough. I still lived in the same apartment. I still counted money. I still checked every line before paying it. The difference was that I no longer had to choose between a bus ride, groceries, and a fee nobody could explain. And when another resident found a number she did not recognize, there was finally somewhere for that problem to go before it became a notice on a door. Subscribe to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comments. The council's next quarterly review was already scheduled, and one unresolved former tenant case was still open when I placed the $140 emergency envelope back in the drawer.